Rise, fall.
Hey, this is Michael.
And this is Emma.
Okay, so I want you to imagine something. Picture yourself stepping out into the heat, the dust of Central Asia, around the year 1333.
Right.
You're the famous traveler, Ibn Battuta, and you've come all this way to see the great cities of the Silk Road, Bukhara, Samarkand.
The jewels of the world, that's what he was expecting. Opulent domes, thriving markets, incredible centers of learning.
But that's not what he found at all. His journals. They paint this absolutely terrifying picture.
Terrifying is the word. He found Bukhara. It was once the absolute pinnacle of the Islamic world, and he found it mostly in ruins.
Just dilapidated.
Yeah.
Mosques, colleges, bazaars, all falling apart. The fields are empty.
And the people who were left were basically living in subjugation. He also passed through Balkh, which was even stranger.
Yes, Balkh stood solid, vast, but just eerie. An entire intact city with nobody in it.
Completely uninhabited. No cooking fires, no animals, nothing. Just this silent monument. And travelers told him similar stories about Merv, a city of 500,000 people, now just ruins for owls and wild dogs.
And all of this destruction, this cataclysm, it all points back to one single event, the uniting of the Mongols.
Exactly. They took this, anarchic, pastoral culture from the steppe and forged it into an unstoppable war machine, the largest contiguous land empire in history.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to trace the path of the Mongols from their nomadic origins right up to their peak as global conquerors.
And more importantly, we have to look at their legacy, which is so deeply contradictory. They left behind this catastrophic destruction.
But also, almost by accident, they laid the groundwork for our modern interconnected world. We've got sources on everything from horse husbandry to terror tactics, so let's get into it.
To really understand the Mongols, you have to start with the environment that forged them, the Eurasian steppe.
Right.
It's the largest grassland on Earth. A massive corridor of savanna stretching, over 8,000 kilometers from Hungary all the way to Manchuria.
That's a mind-boggling distance, and the geography is everything. You've got cold Arctic air flowing down from Siberia, so there's very little rainfall.
Which means no big trees, just these really hardy, short grasses.
The perfect grazing surface for huge herds of animals.
And this environment demanded a culture built on pure movement. Which brings us to the key technology. The horse.
The horse revolution.
Absolutely. Before they domesticated the horse maybe 6,000 years ago, a herder on foot could cover, 30 kilometers a day?
Which really limits the size of your herd, and therefore your wealth, your power, everything.
But once the horse was mastered, and we see evidence of bit wear on horse bones in Kazakhstan from 5,000 years ago, that entire world just accelerates.
Suddenly you can cover over 100 kilometers a day. You're moving 5 times faster.
And that unprecedented mobility means you can manage enormous herds. Your whole life it has to be perpetually moving. You can't build a city, you can't farm.
Everything has to be packed up and ready to go at a moment's notice.
Which is why their home was the guru tent. It's made of felt walls on a light willow lattice, designed specifically to be taken down and put back up, sometimes daily.
And they lived off what they could carry: milk, meat, cheese.
And for fuel, they had a genius solution: dried goat dung.
Sounds rough, but it was incredibly efficient.
It's clean burning, and it doesn't leave a big smoke trail like a wood fire would. And for people who valued mobility and discretion, that was critical.
And in this huge, flat, featureless landscape, how did they even navigate?
They followed the major rivers, the Orkhon, the Selenge, the Anan. But the sources say this knowledge wasn't on maps. It was passed down through generations in poems and songs.
Wow. Your survival depends on memorizing verses about the terrain.
And survival was a constant, brutal negotiation with nature, especially the winter.
The horses were key here too, right? Not just for transport.
Indispensable. When the snow froze into a thick layer of ice, the horses would use their hooves to crack it open so the weaker livestock, like the sheep, could get to the frozen grass underneath.
That's a culture built on pure resilience.
And that brutal existence is the real foundation for the rise of Temujin.
Later Genghis Khan.
Right. His father, Yasujino, was poisoned by a rival tribe, the Tartars, and that left his mother, Olun, completely destitute.
And we're not just talking about poverty. She was gathering wild fruits and using needles bent into fish hooks just to keep her children from starving.
If you want to understand the man who became Genghis Khan, you have to start with that childhood of just absolute desperation.
And it was in that hardship that he learned the one great lesson of the steppe.
The parable of the 5 arrows. It comes from the mythology of Alan the Beautiful and her 5 sons who are always fighting.
She showed them that a single arrow is easy to snap.
But when you bundle the 5 together, they become unbreakable. The lesson was simple. Without your family, your uruk, or your wider clan, the ubak, you were defenseless. You were prey.
But the Mongols also developed this amazing social technology to create family bonds, not just by blood, but by choice.
You're talking about Anadased, blood brotherhood.
Exactly. An eternal allegiance taken just as seriously as being related by blood. It allowed them to move beyond old clan rivalries.
Temujin himself swore this oath with Jamukha, his greatest friend and, later, his most bitter rival. Their ambitions just tore that bond apart.
So when Temujin is finally proclaimed Genghis Khan in 1206, the Great Khan, he takes this fiercely independent anarchic culture and just completely restructures it.
He doesn't just conquer, he creates a state. The Yek Mongol Ulis, the people of the Felt Walls. And his reforms were, for the time, astonishingly modern.
Starting with meritocracy.
Right. The old way was all about your status, your rank. But Genghis Khan said loot from conquests would be shared based on merit in battle. A common soldier who fought bravely could get a bigger share than some lazy noble.
And did that actually stick?
For a while, yes, it was a huge part of his power. But the most profound reform, and this goes right back to his childhood, was a kind of proto-insurance policy.
Social welfare.
Exactly. A soldier's share of the loot, if he died, went to his widow and orphans. He was ensuring his warriors' families would never face the same destitution that he did.
That's an incredible incentive for loyalty. He also had to deal with the internal divisions, the blood feuds that are constantly tearing the steppe apart.
And he did that with the Yasa, the Great Law. He basically replaced personal vengeance with centralized justice.
So a crime against one person became a crime against the whole state.
Precisely. No more cycles of revenge killings. The Khan's court would settle it. It created this unprecedented internal order.
And then there's his religious tolerance.
Which was incredibly pragmatic. He wasn't an adherent of any one religion, but he protected them all. Muslims, Christians, Buddhists. It wasn't about enlightenment. It was about preventing religious conflict from tearing his empire apart.
So this new, unified, structured state, the Yek Mongol Ulis, turns its eyes outward.
And the rest of the world was just completely unprepared.
Let's talk about that war machine. It wasn't just numbers, it was a whole system. The key was mobility.
Unstoppable mobility. Every single warrior rode with up to 5 spare mounts.
Which means they could travel for hundreds of miles for days without ever tiring a single horse.
And they could sustain themselves on the move. They didn't need supply lines. They could drink blood from their horses or eat meat that was tenderized under the saddle all day.
And critically, no campfires. So stationary armies would have no idea they were even coming.
And then there's the weapon, the composite bow.
An engineering marvel. Layers of wood, bone, and horn all glued together.
It had this incredible power-to-weight ratio. It could shoot farther than an English longbow, but it was small enough to be fired easily from a full gallop.
That combination, the speed of 5 horses and that bow, made the steppe archer the deadliest tactical unit on the planet.
But the physical warfare was almost secondary to their greatest weapon, which was psychological terror.
The system of the 3 tents.
Right. It was a calculated system for surrender. Before a single arrow was fired, they'd arrive at a city and set up the white tent.
That meant surrender now and you'll be spared. You'll be taxed, but your city won't be harmed.
But if you resisted, after a few days, up went the red tent.
The stakes are higher now. Surrender is still an option, but all adult males will be killed.
It's sending a very clear message. Hesitation has a price.
And if you still held out, believing your walls would save you.
Then they pitched the black tent. And the warning was simple. When we take this city, everything dies. Not just the people. The livestock, the trees, even the irrigation canals were destroyed.
This absolute ruthlessness created this narrative that they were, well, inevitable, like a force of nature.
And Genghis Khan leaned into that. In Bukhara in 1220, he supposedly rode into the city's great mosque and told the terrified people, "I am the scourge of God. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you."
He's not just a conqueror, He's an instrument of divine judgment.
And the case studies of this brutality are just immense, and they were all designed to break the will of the next city. Take Beijing in 1215. The sources say the violence was so extreme that travelers later described the ground as being greasy and dark from human fat.
And they saw a great white mound that was actually a pile of human bones.
Horrifying. And then there's Nishapur in 1221. This one was personal. After the city killed the Khan's son-in-law, Tokachar, Genghis Khan let his grieving daughter decide the city's fate.
And she ordered a genocidal massacre.
The entire population. She reportedly demanded that the heads of the men, women, and children be piled up in separate pyramids to show the completeness of the revenge.
So the story of Nishapur travels faster than any army.
Exactly. But, and this is a critical part of the strategy leniency, was also calculated. Cities that surrendered quickly were often spared, at least for a while.
The goal was to make sure the stories of both the terror and the mercy spread ahead of them through refugees. It was a way to win battles without having to fight them.
But this entire immense empire was built around the will of one man and the unity of his family. The second that unity fractured, the whole thing started to crumble.
Genghis Khan dies in 1227, and his successor, his son Ogedei, dies in 1241 from what the sources call raging alcoholism.
Right, there's that dark detail about him having a cup made twice the normal size, so he could keep his promise to limit the number of cups he drank each day.
The infighting over succession just exploded after that. The brothers started fighting each other, just like the old blood feuds the Yasa was supposed to end.
And after Mongol Khan died in 1259, the empire fractured for good into 4 separate, often warring khanas. The arrows were broken.
And they finally found the limit to their conquests. The jungles of Vietnam defeated their horse archers.
And famously, the typhoons, the kamikaze, or divine wind, destroyed Kublai Khan's invasion fleet off the coast of Japan. Their military machine was dominant, but it wasn't climate-proof.
But this is where the legacy gets so complex, because even as the political empire broke apart, the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace, kept the trade routes open and safe.
And that security was a world-changing development. It reopened the Silk Road, leading to a massive spike in east-west trade that had been choked off for centuries.
And all that wealth flowing west is what fueled the rise of Italian city-states like Genoa and Venice. It basically laid the financial groundwork for the Renaissance.
The Mongols became these incredible conduits for technology. They brought Chinese inventions like gunpowder, the compass, and paper to Europe.
Things Francis Bacon later said fundamentally changed the world: literature, warfare, and navigation.
But the psychological impact on the places they conquered was also immense. Look at China. After the Mongol Yuan dynasty, the next dynasty, the Ming, turned radically inward.
And they built the Great Wall, as we know it today. Over 9,000 kilometers of wall.
Using enough material to build the Great Pyramid of Giza 50 times over, it was a literal wall built out of historical trauma to seal themselves off from the steppe forever.
And here's one of the most unbelievable connections. The Mongols favored the princes of Moscow as their tax collectors.
Because they were ruthlessly efficient. And by centralizing all that wealth and power in Moscow, the Mongols unintentionally created the foundation for what would become the Tsardom of Russia.
The ultimate unintended consequence.
In the end, this 5,000-year dominance of the steppe nomad was broken by a combination of things. That internal discord, the rise of gunpowder weapons that could challenge their archers.
Yes. And the very interconnectedness they created.
Exactly, the Black Death. It traveled along their safe, efficient trade routes. It's estimated the plague killed up to 2/3 of the population in China. The system that built their empire became the mechanism of its demise.
So when you step back, the Mongol legacy is this incredible paradox. On one hand, they may have caused a massive drop in global carbon emissions just by depopulating huge parts of Eurasia.
A massive carbon sink created by conquest. Yet at the same time, they massively accelerated global communication, trade, and technological transfer by forcibly connecting 2 continents.
They pushed the world forward, often through unbelievable horror. And this raises a really interesting question for you, the person listening to this today who's trying to learn about this stuff.
Right. You rely on guides like us to distill this complex history. But how often can you actually go and check the sources for yourself?
It's a real challenge. We're all looking for the facts. But a study that looked at educational content online found that even when creators provide tons of references, the accessibility of those sources is, well, it's often compromised.
The study found that something like 22% of the references were behind paywalls or subscriptions, and another 14% were just not found. Broken links, deleted pages.
The knowledge is out there, but access is conditional. Cost, editorial decisions, platform changes, all these things can prevent you from independently validating what you're being told.
So the ultimate challenge for the modern learner isn't just absorbing the history, it's recognizing that the very evidence you rely on today might not be accessible tomorrow. It makes you wonder, when we talk about these world-changing events, how much trust do we have to place in the person guiding us through the archive? It's something to think about.
Stone by stone, the towers grew tall. Echoes of power in the mighty hall. 1,000 banners in the golden light, marching forward to claim the night. Rise, rise to the heavens, they cry. Empire's born, and the fire in the fire and pride. But the earth it turns, and the winds will call. Rise, rise, then crumble and crown of kings and swords of steel. A fleeting moment, the world will kneel. Dust on the thrones where the rulers sat. History whispers, remember.